Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone, my name is Andy. I'm the Managing Consultant for Cybervenger. And today we're going to be talking about the NIST 800-171 standard and a specific control inside that standard 3.1.1. Now this standard, the NIST 800-171, applies to anyone doing business with the federal government. It protects federal contract information, FCI, or CUI, controlled unclassified information. Federal contract information is pretty open-ended. If you have a contract to supply 1,000 staplers to an FBI office, that's a federal contract. That you are ordering staplers, what model you're ordering, how much they cost, that's all federal contract information and needs to be protected by the 800-171. More famously is small manufacturing, building parts for tanks like a battery cable or something for an Abrams. My favorite example. But not necessarily classified stuff. We're not talking about missile guidance systems or anything that's, stealth technology, that kind of thing. Just your regular kind of devices and objects. Really, CUI is anything created or given to the end user, created by the end user or given to end user by the government in service of a federal contract. So even if you're making it, if you're the one designing it, it can still be covered. That's why it's important to get all these controls down. So 3.1.1 says very plainly and simply that you have to limit access to anything that could have CUI and FCI on it by user. So only access to authorized users, services, or devices can access this information, right? Now, you may have an enclave on your network that is for CUI functions, that produces and deals with CUI and federal contract, and the rest of your company doesn't have to follow one of these exact controls, or you may have everything follow these controls, because these controls are good security practices. You should be doing this anyway, and sometimes separating is more difficult. But moving on, either way you want to go, if you have users, you got to authenticate them, right? What does that mean? Active Directory is a really good example, kind of a specific real-world example here. You can't log into a system onto a workstation and start poking around and doing anything and seeing what access you have unless you identify yourself as somebody. And it has to be a specific user. Now, there are other requirements that talk about what rights you have on a network, what permissions you can, and separating that. None of those requirements are, they're not talking about login. This is talking just about the login. This is not talking about permissions. Those are. So, for example, 3.3.2 is a requirement that says that you must have a unique user, specific username and credentials specific to that user, so you can identify who's doing what. This isn't even talking about that. That requirement handles that. This handles just saying you have to restrict access by user, service, or device. Moving on to services. Services are a little more difficult for the average user, but certainly any IT tech knows what a Windows service is, or under Linux it would be called a daemon. Now those services or daemons can be run in the background as a user or as what's called a system account, and that system account has basically, effectively God rights, if you want to call it that. They can do anything. Not ideal in a NIST compliance world. You should have that running as a specific user so you can tailor those rights and at least identify who or what is doing a function on the network, whether it's a service, whether it's a user, that kind of thing. That's what that's talking about here. And devices. The way I would interpret the device is that the device shouldn't be able to bang away at random ports on your network if it's not part of that CUI enclave anyway, or it's not part of your organizations. So you don't want your computers just sitting on the internet, being able to reach, having to reach in without going through a firewall or a VPN or that sort of thing. This doesn't specifically access, it doesn't address remote access. It's talking just that you have limits to specific machines. So we're speaking very generically here. With a device, you could do it simply by having a VLAN. You could put all your devices in a VLAN that are allowed to access CUI and leave the ones that don't need to out in a different separate VLAN. That's a way to do it. Or you could have some kind of radius authentication for the machine, that sort of thing. There's a lot of ways to do that. But as long as you are doing it, you're fulfilling 3.1.1. It's very generic, and it comes up in a lot of other NIST controls, so they all kind of mesh together. It's not always so standalone. This makes it difficult when you're going through this. You can't really just check a box one item at a time. this principle, that this control here shows up in wireless demands that you have. There's a wireless control that demands that you authenticate a user before they're allowed onto wireless. So kind of repetitive, right? So it comes back up over and over again. So whatever you do, you're going to have to make sure that you're always authenticating a user or service or device if it's accessing anything CUI. And that includes applications. Just because someone has a right to be on the network doesn't mean they should have access to an application. And if you can't at least authenticate that application, let's say you're using 4D or E2 or Sage or MyTrack or any kind of ERP system, you should have a separate set of controls or a separate set of authentication. And that authentication could be using Active Directory as the back end. It doesn't have to be a different set of usernames and passwords necessarily, but it should not allow someone who hasn't logged in to be able to bang away at it and try and do whatever. You should have be able to control the access by authenticating. So that's 3.1.1. There's 110 more of these to go, and there are 14 categories, I would call them, but they refer to them as requirements. The access control requirement's the first, and that's what this is a part of. And there are 25 of those. So we're going to be doing a quick 5-minute video on each one, and that is 3.1.1. I'm Andy with Cybervenger. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.